Welcome to episode 2 of Pictish Shorts, our new podcast from the Pictish Art Society. The podcast where we introduce you to some of the people in the Pictish universe, or the Pictiverse, if you prefer, or maybe Cruthniverse works better. Anyway, academics, artists, archaeologists, and craftspeople. And we're going to ask the same questions to each person, and with a bit of luck, we might even get some different answers each time. Now, our guest for episode 2 is Professor Gordon Noble of Aberdeen University. Gordon is no stranger to most of us. Indeed, he's no stranger to podcasts, TV programs like Digging for Britain, and lectures and conferences all over the place. And he also appears regularly as a name on the books folk have on their bookshelves behind them on Zoom lectures. Now, tell us a little bit about your current projects, Gordon.
Hi, David. Thanks for welcoming me on to this podcast. It's a great pleasure. Yeah, we're working on many different projects at the moment. We'll be back at Burghead next summer, working on the amazing promontory fort there. But right now we're putting on the final touches on the Rhynie monograph, which should be out in February, we hope, published by the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland. So that'll be hugely exciting to get that 10-year project wrapped up and out in the public domain.
Yeah, fantastic. Can't wait. And so, of course, you're in winter activities now. Not a lot of digging going on. So anyway, let's crack on with the questions. Question number 1. What first got you interested in matters Pictish?
This is a really interesting one because slightly embarrassing one because I actually grew up in northeast Scotland, in Fraserburgh specifically. And I managed to get all the way to university without ever having heard of the Picts at all. No clue, no concept, never seen a Pictish stone, not heard about the Picts, didn't do anything in school about them, no clue. And then I was studying art history with the great Jane Geddes. Professor Jane Geddes at the University of Aberdeen, and we did this course called the Work of Angels, and it was all about early medieval art and sculpture, architecture, and the like across Britain and Ireland. And there were a few lectures and a few sessions and a field trip on the Picts, and this was just such a revelation. Wow, how did I not know about this? And again, it was really embarrassing. Like, you are the local boy on this course. Yeah, no clue. And I was instantly hooked, absolutely hooked. And Jane took us on a field trip, or series of field trips, to places like Aberlemno. We went up to Burghead. We went to Cowsey Caves, probably the most dangerous field trip I've ever been on. And I've got everything to thank Jane for in terms of like putting me on the track to studying the Picts. But it was slightly circuitous route after that as well, because I went and did a master's at UCL, and before I went to do that, I had an interview with Professor Martin Carver to do a PhD on the Picts. But various people were like, "Oh, well, you don't have a background in archaeology, so you should go do this master's and kind of conversion course." And I'm so glad I did, because I think I've been too not ready to really go plunge straight into the world of the Picts. And also people said, don't go and study the Picts anyway. There's nothing to know, and stones, etc. That's where madness lies. People literally told me this, and I was like, okay, right, I'll go off and do this master's. And then I ended up doing lots of prehistoric archaeology because I was digging with Richard Bradley, the great prehistorian. And so I ended up doing lots of prehistoric digs. And it was only when I got the job in Aberdeen, lecturing in archaeology, that I was like, oh, let's do a little sideline project on the Picts, just, little project. We won't find anything. And it was myself and Megan Gondek. We're like, oh, let's have a look at Rhynie. There's this, amazing stones there. But, I don't think we'll find anything.
Here we are.
Here we are, what's that, 14 years later, and I don't study prehistory much anymore. And the Picts is my absolute obsession and, my main focus. Circuitous route for sure in studying the Picts.
Yes, then that leads us on to the next question, was what do you find most fascinating about the Picts now, apart from everything?
Well, again, it's that goes back to that perception that there was you couldn't find out anything about Picts through archaeology, and don't bother, and you couldn't find out anything about the symbol stones and the like. And we can't crack the code, for example, of the symbol stones. But when you do have monuments that you can look at the context, sites like Riney, where we're looking at the settlement that surrounds some of the fine spots of the stones there, or Dunacair, where we knew there were symbol stones from a wall from this, what turned out to be a promontory fort, then you can find out stuff. You can find out the context, you can get some idea of chronology, and every dig that we do in a picture site produces genuinely new, quite often revelatory evidence. Whereas when I was doing prehistory, we know more about the Neolithic than we do about the Pictish period. So you were digging sites, and it was kind of incremental knowledge. It was like, oh, here's another Neolithic stone circle, or here's another settlement site. And that's interesting, but it was kind of incremental advances. Whereas the kind of work that we've done on sites like Riney or Dunacair really felt like big leaps into the unknown to start with, and then, producing information that really helps us understand this amazing society that we all know and love.
Fascinated by. This is the real fun question 3, and that is, what is your favourite stone or Pictish artefact?
Right. Okay. Oh God, so many of these questions are so difficult to answer. But one thing that constantly amazes me about Riney, there were so many amazing things about what we found at Riney, but was finding objects in the ground that resemble what you see on the stones.
Oh,
And that
yes.
for me was just that was the eye-opening moment. And I was like, wow. Not only can we find stuff about the Picts, we can also find stuff in the ground that tells us about these enigmatic carvings. And so one thing we found at Riney was this series of molds for making the little animal figurines. So if you haven't seen these, then be in the monograph, which will be out soon. And it's a series of molds. There's about a dozen of them, and it's different animals. And there are things like boars or hounds or wolves, and maybe a bear as well. I've actually got a little silver cast that Jennifer Gray from Edinburgh College made. She did some scanning of one of the molds and created this through casting. And they're just fascinating. I honestly don't think we'll surpass that in terms of finding something that is so amazing and really illuminates the world of the Picts on that level from a single object or series of objects. So yeah, that's for me is one of the highlights of my career so far.
It's a good shout. I did think it would be either one of those or Flemington, the Pictish stone that the project uncovered at Aberlebno.
Yeah, no, I mean, Flemington's good, but for me, it's always finding stuff in context, and Flemington wasn't really in its original context.
No.
So, I'd love for all of us to find more Pictish stones. But for me as an archaeologist, it's really finding stuff in context that really fires me up. And, not only could we find these molds at Riney, but we could date them, we could date the layers. And, that's, again, kind of push back our chronologies for some of the artistic motifs, and that's really exciting.
Personally, I'd love to see you find some more bull carvings in context at Burghead.
Oh, you just ruined my last question there.
Did I really? Yeah, I'll take that bit out. Right, next question. Right, pause. Next question. If someone could only visit one site or museum, which one and why?
God, yeah, as I say, some of these questions I just, really struggle. There's just so many. I mean, there's so many amazing sites and museums to go to. Fiona in her podcast number 1 mentioned National Museum. It's great in terms of all the stones there. Tarbert Discovery Centre, Grome House, they're all amazing. But obviously I'm going to have to choose a site that's close to the heart. And again, like, is it Burghead? Is it Riney? I'm not sure. But I'm going to plump for Riney, just in terms of go see the Crawstain standing field. Watch out for the bulls.
Yeah.
Not the Burghead bulls, but other bulls. And, go have a Trompop tapping off and just take in the fact that, this is the largest Pictish settlement we know of, the largest settlement of that period pretty much in Britain and Ireland. And it's in northeast Scotland, in a site that means so much to many of us who've worked on Pictish archaeology over the last few years.
Yeah, and thanks to you and your projects, you can tell the story of it.
Yeah.
Rather than just look up and wonder. We've got a bit more to go on now, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's fantastic. Last question. Which lost stone or fragment would you most like to find? So this is my question, and it's based very much on the fact that the bit of a stone that would tell us an awful lot of information is almost invariably missing. So you got a choice of a fragment or a stone. Take your pick.
Oh God, again, this is probably the question that created the most difficulty for me.
Good.
Thanks, David.
My job is done. Yeah.
And again, I was really, stuck between a couple of examples. I mean, it's disappointing we didn't find a nice stone in situ at Dunacair, for example. But again, the beauty there was that we were able to put those stones in context through the dating and through the excavations there. But given the current focus at Burgh Head and this absolutely amazing site of Burgh Head with its 30-odd bulls, most of which are now missing, finding a Burgh Head bull in context, or indeed any of the fragments of sculpture or the missing bits of that in context of Burgh Head, i.e. some of the early Christian sculpture, would be absolutely amazing if you could find some of the context for that. And that's one of the missing pieces of the story of Burgh Head, despite all the amazing finds, all the buildings, all the remarkable artifacts that we're uncovering in there. It would be really nice to understand more about the context of the sculpture. Where were the bulls? How were they deployed? Where was the focus of the early Christian sculpture? Can we tell us anything about, belief? Was there an early church there? For sure, seems likely. That would be really exciting. Archaeologists very rarely find these things actually in context. It's usually a farmer plowing his field, or a sculpture falls out of a wall somewhere, and lo and behold, you've got this new discovery. And all those are exciting. But again, as an archaeologist, finding something in context where you can date the layers, date the origins of that site, and try and get a greater handle on the chronology for these carvings. As I say, without a Rosetta Stone, we're unlikely to crack the code. But what we can do is understand more about the context of these amazing carvings through time.
Yeah, I suppose you're never going to find what you're looking for, really, are you, as an archaeologist?
No.
You find everything else.
No, that's amazing and frustrating in terms of you will always turn up something you didn't expect, but always the things you really hope for rarely come up. But mind you, there are examples of that, like East Lomond, for example, finding, a doorknob, spear butt, and,
Yes.
axe head and a hand pin, all the kind of checklist of things you might want to find on the early medieval site in Pictland. Some sites like East Lomond and Burgh Head, like tick, tick. So that's incredible. And, it's a real privilege to be able to do what we do. And it's great to be able to be at the, point at which some of these discoveries are made.
Well, you're certainly working at the cutting edge of Pictish archaeology, Gordon, and thanks for joining us today. That was grand. It was the perfect 10-minute interview in that it was nearly 20 minutes. But thanks very much, and we can't wait for the new book in the new year. So have a great weekend.
Cheers. Thanks.